Love true crime? Want more shocking stories like this? Hit subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of the latest twists and turns. Join us on True Crime Secrets for exclusive deep dives into the most mysterious and chilling cases. Don't miss a single moment. Subscribe now. What happens when trust is shattered in an instant? When love, so carefully cultivated, becomes the stage for betrayal and violence? Picture this: a charming, wealthy man, a boyfriend who seemed to have it all: power, influence, and the world at his fingertips. By his side, a woman who seemed to adore him, who shared his secrets, his dreams, until he uncovered hers. A secret so dangerous, it unraveled everything. But secrets don't just emerge, they build, piece by piece, moment by moment. And when the truth finally surfaced, it was like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. What pushed him to the edge? What forced her into a life of deception? And why did it have to end in bloodshed? In a world defined by appearances, where love is often measured by grand gestures and expensive gifts, Jennifer's life seemed like the kind of story people dream of. She was young, vibrant, and living a life of unimaginable luxury. Her boyfriend, Dominic, was no ordinary man. He was heir to a sprawling empire. An empire built on power, influence, and secrets hidden in plain sight. Their relationship was a spectacle of extravagance: candlelit dinners at exclusive restaurants, trips aboard private jets, and a diamond-studded life most could only imagine. To the outside world, they were perfect, a golden couple living a flawless life. But behind the sparkling facade of wealth and romance lay an entirely different reality, one that few could comprehend. Dominic was no stranger to danger. Born into a family with ties stretching deep into the underworld, his wealth wasn't just inherited, it was built on deals sealed in back rooms and loyalty enforced by fear. Jennifer, with her radiant smile and seemingly unassuming charm, became a fixture in his life. She was adored, trusted, and for a while, unquestioned. But what Dominic didn't know, what no one could have imagined, was that Jennifer was hiding a secret. One that would shatter their world and force a reckoning neither of them could escape. A moment of carelessness changed everything. A single slip and the intricate web Jennifer had woven began to unravel. The truth was coming for her, and Dominic was the last person she wanted to find out. But as anyone who knew him could attest, Dominic didn't forgive betrayal. And this betrayal? It wasn't just personal, it was life or death. Jennifer's life had always been about justice. Joining the force wasn't just a career choice, it was a calling. With a sharp mind and an unshakable resolve, she quickly rose through the ranks, becoming one of the youngest undercover agents in her division. Her latest assignment was the most dangerous yet: infiltrating the intricate web of a powerful Mafia syndicate. Her entry point into this world was Dominic. His name alone commanded respect and fear. A man surrounded by wealth and influence, Dominic was the crown prince of an empire that thrived in the shadows. For Jennifer, the mission was clear: get close, gain trust, and gather enough evidence to dismantle the operation from within. But what started as an assignment quickly became far more complicated. Dominic wasn't just another target. He was charismatic, intelligent, and undeniably magnetic. From the first moment they met, their chemistry was undeniable. What began as a calculated strategy to infiltrate his world became something Jennifer never anticipated: a genuine connection. Their nights together were filled with laughter and whispered promises, a sure sign that his connection with Jennifer was entirely an opposite. Jennifer found herself living a double life, one where she played the role of Dominic's adoring girlfriend while secretly reporting back to her team. But every moment with Dominic came with a cost. Each stolen glance, every shared touch, carried the weight of the truth she couldn't reveal. Jennifer wasn't just risking her heart, she was risking her life. And as her feelings deepened, so did the danger. The closer she got to Dominic, the more she saw the ruthlessness of the world he lived in. Yet, she couldn't walk away. She told herself it was for the mission, for the greater good, but was it? Or had she crossed a line she could never come back from? For Dominic, trust wasn't just a virtue, it was survival. Growing up in a world where betrayal could mean death, his instincts had been sharpened to detect even the smallest hint of deception. At first, Jennifer's charm, intelligence, and ease in his world seemed genuine. She fit seamlessly into his life, knowing when to laugh at his jokes, when to show compassion, and when to fade into the background of his dangerous dealings. But over time, something began to feel out of place. Small details, her questions about his business dealings, her late-night disappearances, the occasional flicker of unease in her eyes, didn't add up. Dominic didn't confront her immediately. Instead, he watched, he listened, and most importantly, he waited. The moment came one night when Jennifer left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. Dominic wasn't the type to invade privacy, but his instincts wouldn't let it go. He picked it up, scrolling through messages and emails. At first, there was nothing unusual, until he stumbled upon a string of coded texts, conversations with someone named Agent R. The language was vague but clear enough to send chills down his spine. Words like target, surveillance, and evidence leapt off the screen. Dominic's world froze. His pulse quickened as realization hit him. Jennifer wasn't just curious about his business. She was building a case. The woman he had allowed into his life, into his heart, was an undercover cop sent to destroy everything he had built. He didn't confront her immediately. Instead, Dominic dug deeper. Over the next few days, he began piecing together the puzzle. He hired someone to follow her. He examined her movements and traced her steps. And with each discovery, the betrayal cut deeper. He found a second phone hidden in her car, filled with detailed notes about his associates, his operations, and even his personal habits. When the truth was undeniable, Dominic made his move. The confrontation wasn't calm or calculated, it was a storm of emotions. Jennifer came home to find Dominic sitting in the dark, her phone and the second device laid out on the coffee table. The weight of his stare was crushing as he uttered the words that would change everything. "Who are you really, Jennifer?" Jennifer froze, her mind racing for an explanation, but there was no use. Dominic's voice rose, laced with fury and disbelief. "You lied to me. You used me. Everything we had. Was it all fake?" She tried to explain, but Dominic was beyond reason. The man who had once looked at her with love and tenderness now saw her as a threat that needed to be eliminated. His trust was shattered, and in his world, betrayal was met with only one response. It was supposed to be just another night in the lavish world Jennifer had grown accustomed to. A world of tailored suits, fine wine, and whispered promises. The penthouse apartment she shared with Dominic, perched high above the city, was an oasis of opulence. From the glittering chandelier to the marble floors, every detail spoke of wealth and power. But that night, it would bear witness to something unimaginable. Dominic's anger hadn't subsided since the confrontation. Days had passed, but the betrayal gnawed at him relentlessly. His mind replayed the moments when he had let his guard down, the moments he had trusted her, cared for her. In his world, betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a threat to his very survival. And for that, there was only one solution. Jennifer sensed the shift in Dominic's demeanor. His silence was no longer brooding, it was calculating. His eyes, once filled with affection, now lingered on her with an unnerving intensity. That evening, as they sat across from each other at the dinner table, the atmosphere was suffocating. Every word she spoke seemed to bounce off a wall of cold indifference. When Dominic finally spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and unnervingly direct. "Do you ever think about consequences, Jennifer?" he asked, his gaze unwavering. The question sent a chill down her spine. She attempted to deflect, to steer the conversation to safer ground, but Dominic wasn't listening. He rose from his chair, his movements deliberate, and walked to the bar. The moment felt eternal. The sound of a glass being set down, the clink of ice against crystal, it was all so ordinary, yet it carried an edge of finality. Jennifer's heartbeat quickened as she watched Dominic's every move. She knew she was running out of time. And then it happened. A single flash. A movement so quick and so violent that it barely registered until it was too late. The sound of a gunshot shattered the stillness, reverberating through the penthouse. Jennifer gasped, stumbling backward, her hands instinctively clutching her chest. The look in her eyes was a mix of shock, betrayal, and despair. Dominic stood motionless, the gun still in his hand. His expression was unreadable, his breathing steady. For a moment, the world seemed frozen. Then, the gravity of his actions began to sink in. The luxurious penthouse, once a sanctuary of love and ambition, was now a crime scene. Jennifer's lifeless body crumpled to the floor, her blood pooling on the pristine marble. The contrast was striking, almost surreal, the vivid red against the sterile white. Dominic didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He simply stood there, as if waiting for the weight of what he had done to crush him. The aftermath was methodical. Dominic moved with an eerie calm, cleaning up what he could, wiping away traces of what had just occurred. But no matter how much he tried, there was no erasing what had been done. The walls seemed to echo with the sound of the gunshot, a haunting reminder of his irreversible choice. When the police arrived hours later, called by a neighbor who had heard the commotion, Dominic was gone. The penthouse was left in disarray, a shattered glass, a blood-stained rug, and the chilling silence of a life abruptly ended. Forensics teams began their work, meticulously piecing together the events of that night. But the question remained, where was Dominic? And what would happen when the truth about Jennifer's real identity was uncovered? The murder wasn't just a crime of passion. It was the beginning of a storm that would upend both their worlds and leave a trail of destruction no one could have anticipated. The morning after the crime, the penthouse was eerily quiet. The once vibrant space that had seen countless celebrations, private conversations, and whispered secrets now stood as a haunting reminder of what had unfolded the night before. The faint hum of police radios broke the silence as investigators arrived, their footsteps echoing against the cold marble floors. Detectives moved methodically through the scene, piecing together the remnants of a love story gone terribly wrong. The trail of evidence told a chilling story. Jennifer's body lay where it had fallen, surrounded by shattered glass and scattered remnants of the life she had built with Dominic. Her badge, a symbol of her secret mission, had fallen from her pocket, now lying in plain view, its glint catching the morning light. As crime scene photographers captured the grim details, the investigation began to take shape. The neighbors' reports of a loud argument and a single gunshot pointed to foul play, and it wasn't long before Dominic's name emerged as the prime suspect. His sudden disappearance added to the mounting suspicion. Where had he gone? And more importantly, what was he planning next? The media was quick to seize the story. Headlines blared across news channels and social media platforms. Mafia heir at large, the double life of Dominic Alvarez. Reporters speculated about his connections to organized crime and the mysterious death of his girlfriend Jennifer. But the public didn't know the whole story, not yet. Mayor Martin saved us from the grand jury by appealing to the public for permission to release the footage. Inside the precinct, detectives worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. Jennifer's colleagues in law enforcement, already reeling from the loss of one of their own, revealed the nature of her undercover mission. For months, she had been gathering evidence against Dominic and his associates, aiming to dismantle one of the most powerful mafia operations in the country. But her mission had come at a cost. Her dual life as a cop and Dominic's lover had placed her in a precarious position, one that ultimately led to her tragic end. The deeper the detectives delved into Dominic's past, the more tangled the web became. Bank statements, surveillance footage, and intercepted communications painted a picture of a man who wasn't just wealthy and charming, but ruthless and calculating. Yet even with mounting evidence, Dominic's true whereabouts remained a mystery. The pressure on law enforcement was immense. Jennifer's family demanded justice, her colleagues sought answers, and the public watched the investigation unfold with bated breath. Every new detail added fuel to the fire. Anonymous tips began pouring in, each one leading detectives down a different path. Some claimed to have seen Dominic boarding a private jet, others reported sightings in distant cities, but none of the leads seemed solid. The case took an unexpected turn when investigators found a hidden compartment in Dominic's office at the penthouse. Inside, they discovered a collection of documents, contracts, photos, and notes that revealed the extent of his criminal empire. Among them was a list of names, people who had crossed him or posed a threat. Jennifer's name was circled. As the days turned into weeks, the search for Dominic intensified. His face was plastered on every news outlet, his name synonymous with betrayal and violence. But even as law enforcement closed in, questions lingered. Was Dominic acting alone, or was he being protected by the very network Jennifer had been trying to dismantle? For those closest to Jennifer, the investigation was more than a search for answers. It was a fight for closure. Her colleagues vowed to see her mission through, to bring down the organization that had taken her life. And as the evidence against Dominic grew, so did the resolve of those determined to see justice served. But in a world where power and loyalty are everything, the line between justice and vengeance blurred. And as the investigation pressed forward, one thing became clear: this was only the beginning of a much larger story. It had been weeks since Jennifer's death, and while all signs pointed to Dominic as the prime suspect, the investigation took an unexpected turn. A small, encrypted drive tucked away in Jennifer's belongings. It seemed behind the sliding door many secrets which the people in the world wanted to preserve for themselves. It had been weeks since Jennifer's belongings. Its contents were locked behind layers of sophisticated coding, but its presence alone raised questions. What was Jennifer hiding, and why hadn't she shared this critical piece of information with her team? The task force assigned to her case knew the drive could hold the key to unraveling the full extent of Dominic's empire, or even something entirely different. They brought in cybersecurity experts, who worked around the clock to break the encryption. The effort took days, with each passing hour adding to the tension. And when the drive was finally unlocked, it revealed a carefully constructed series of messages. Jennifer's final act of defiance. The files included logs of secret meetings, audio recordings, and names that didn't just implicate Dominic, but reached further than anyone had imagined. Politicians, high-ranking officials, even some within law enforcement, people who had helped shield Dominic's operations, were listed. It wasn't just Dominic Jennifer had been investigating. She was building a case against an entire network of corruption, one that extended far beyond her original mission. But there was more. Hidden among the documents were personal notes Jennifer had written, detailing her growing suspicions in the weeks before her death. She described moments when she felt watched, her phone calls interrupted by static, and Dominic's increasingly erratic behavior. She wrote about the uneasy feeling that someone within her own team might be feeding information back to Dominic. The discovery sent shockwaves through the task force. If Jennifer had suspected a mole, how deep did the betrayal go? And had that betrayal cost her life? Meanwhile, Dominic was nowhere to be found. But the investigation revealed his desperation. Financial records showed he had begun liquidating assets, wiring money to offshore accounts, and cutting ties with some of his closest associates. His carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble, and his name was now synonymous with one of the largest manhunts in recent history. The team uncovered more encrypted messages in Jennifer's handwriting, each one leading to another layer of the mystery. One message in particular stood out. It was a set of coordinates scrawled hastily on the back of a photograph. The image showed Jennifer and Dominic together at what appeared to be a secluded cabin. Investigators cross-referenced the location and found that the cabin was owned by one of Dominic's shell companies. It was a potential hideout, but what they discovered there only deepened the mystery. Inside the cabin, they found a room lined with photographs of Jennifer. some taken during her undercover mission, others from moments she hadn't even realized she was being watched. There were notes, timelines, and a detailed file on her life before she met Dominic. It was clear she had been under surveillance for months, possibly longer. But the most chilling discovery came from a hidden compartment in the cabin's floorboards. It held a single videotape, unmarked, with no indication of its contents. When investigators played it back, they were faced with a recording of Jennifer, visibly distressed, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're watching this," she began, her voice shaking, "then I didn't make it out. Dominic isn't who you think he is. He's smarter, more dangerous, and more connected than anyone realizes. But there's something bigger at play here. Follow the clues, and you'll find the truth." Her message ended abruptly, leaving more questions than answers. What truth was Jennifer referring to, and who, if anyone, could be trusted to uncover it? He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen his wife. The recording marked a turning point in the investigation. Dominic was no longer just a fugitive accused of murder. He was the centerpiece of a conspiracy that stretched far beyond what anyone had imagined. As investigators raced to connect the dots, they realized the danger wasn't over. In fact, it was only beginning. The arrest of Dominic Alvarez marked the beginning of one of the most gripping legal battles in recent history. From the moment his handcuffs clicked into place, the world watched, waiting to see if the man who had eluded justice for so long would finally face the consequences of his actions. The trial began on a rainy Monday morning. The courtroom was packed, a sea of reporters, legal experts, and curious onlookers. Outside, protesters carried signs demanding justice for Jennifer, while Dominic's supporters, those loyal to the Alvarez family name, stood stoically, their faces betraying no emotion. Inside, the atmosphere was charged. Dominic, dressed in a tailored suit, sat at the defendant's table, his expression unreadable. Across the room, Jennifer's family and colleagues filled the benches, their grief and anger palpable. This wasn't just a trial about a murder. It was about betrayal, corruption, and power. The prosecution opened with a stark reminder of Jennifer's sacrifice. They painted a vivid picture of her undercover work, her bravery in infiltrating Dominic's world, and the danger she faced every day. They detailed the evidence, the encrypted drive, the notes she left behind, and the chilling video found in the cabin. As the video played in court, there was silence. Jennifer's voice filled the room, her fear evident in every word. Jurors shifted in their seats, some avoided eye contact with the screen. Her final plea, "Follow the clues and you'll find the truth," lingered long after the screen went dark. Then came the defense. They argued that Dominic had been set up, that Jennifer's actions as an undercover cop were deceptive, unethical even. They claimed she had manipulated Dominic, playing on his emotions to gather evidence against him. Their case wasn't just a defense, it was an attack on Jennifer's character, painting her as the villain in a story where she had already paid the ultimate price. Witness after witness took the stand. Jennifer's colleagues testified about her dedication to justice, her unwavering commitment to the mission. They spoke of her long hours, the risks she took, and the emotional toll of living a double life. So, her family spoke of her courage, her determination to make the world a better place. Her mother's voice cracked as she described Jennifer's childhood dream of becoming a cop, her desire to help others, no matter the cost. Then it was Dominic's turn. His lawyer presented him as a man caught in a web of lies, a victim of circumstances beyond his control. He claimed Dominic had no motive to kill Jennifer, that their relationship was real, built on mutual trust and love. But the prosecution was prepared. They brought forward evidence of Dominic's violent tendencies, witness accounts of arguments between him and Jennifer, financial records showing his attempts to flee, and damning surveillance footage from the night of Jennifer's death. The jury hung on every word. The courtroom became a battleground, each side presenting their version of the truth. But one moment stood out. A forensic expert, testified about blood evidence found in the penthouse. It was conclusive, irrefutable. The room fell silent as the expert detailed how the evidence linked Dominic to the crime. Closing arguments were emotional. The prosecution reminded the jury of Jennifer's bravery, her dedication to her mission, and her tragic end. They urged the jury to see through the defense's narrative, to focus on the evidence. The defense made one last plea, claiming reasonable doubt, emphasizing Dominic's charm, his lack of a criminal record before this, and the possibility of someone else orchestrating the crime. After weeks of testimony, the jury was sent to deliberate. The nation held its breath. News outlets speculated wildly, pundits debated the outcome, and social media erupted with opinions. Inside the courthouse, tension gripped everyone. The verdict came on a cold Friday morning. The jury filed in, their faces grim. The four persons stood, the room silent. The words were clear, deliberate. We find the defendant, Dominic Alvarez, guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps filled the room. Jennifer's family embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Across the aisle, Dominic's supporters sat in stunned silence. Dominic himself remained motionless, his face a mask of defiance. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted. Some cheered, others wept. Dominic's arrest and conviction marked the fall of a powerful man. But for Jennifer's family and friends, it was bittersweet. Justice had been served, but the loss remained. The sentencing hearing followed weeks later. Dominic received life without parole, his empire dismantled piece by piece. The Alvarez name, once synonymous with power and untouchability, was now forever tainted. But the story didn't end there. Jennifer's case had uncovered a network of corruption that extended far beyond Dominic. Investigations were ongoing, arrests being made. Jennifer's sacrifice had lit a fire that couldn't be extinguished, a reminder of the cost of justice and the power of truth. The loss of Jennifer Monroe didn't just leave a hole in the hearts of those who knew her, it rippled through an entire community. A bright light extinguished too soon, her death became a haunting reminder of the cost of bravery and the unpredictable consequences of the choices we make. Her family was the first to face the full weight of her absence. Her mother, a woman who once proudly spoke of her daughter's courage, now found herself clutching framed photographs, struggling to reconcile the vibrant life within those images with the silence left behind. In her father's workshop, a partially finished project Jennifer had once promised to help with remained untouched, a painful reminder of conversations they'd never have. Among Jennifer's colleagues, the loss was felt in quieter ways. In the precinct, her desk remained as she left it, a coffee mug half full, a stack of paperwork meticulously organized, a small plant she'd cared for now wilting. Her partner, Detective Lisa Harris, spoke tearfully about the last conversation they shared, one filled with cautious optimism about the case she was building. She was more than just a cop, Lisa said in an interview. She was a fighter, a friend, someone who believed in justice, no matter the cost. The media, relentless in their pursuit of the story, painted Jennifer as both a hero and a victim. News anchors replayed moments from her career, an arrest where she risked her life to save a child, a community event where she taught young girls self-defense, a quiet act of kindness caught on camera. Each image and clip pieced together a narrative that was both inspiring and devastating. Jennifer's funeral drew an overwhelming crowd. Police officers from precincts across the state stood in formal salute as her casket was carried down the aisle. The service was punctuated by the sound of sobs, the crackling of a police radio, as Jennifer's badge number was called one final time, and the words of her commanding officer, who described her as the kind of officer every precinct dreams of. But the emotional impact stretched beyond her family and colleagues. In the community she served, Jennifer had been a familiar face, a beacon of hope in neighborhoods often plagued by fear. A single mother who'd once called Jennifer for help shared her story at a vigil. She stayed with me until the locks on my door were fixed. She didn't leave until she knew I was safe. Candles flickered as those gathered reflected on similar stories, a testament to the quiet strength she brought to her work. Yet the loss wasn't without its complications. Jennifer's dual life, her undercover role in Dominic Alvarez's world, raised questions that couldn't be ignored. Could this have been avoided? Had she been given too much responsibility, too much freedom to navigate the dangerous waters alone? Some within the department wrestled with guilt, wondering if the system had failed her, if more safeguards could have changed the outcome. Because of the weight the investigation was carrying, Alvarez found it difficult to leave the workforce quickly. He joined her in the department wrestled with guilt. The most profound impact, however, was on the younger officers, who had seen Jennifer as a mentor. Officer Greg Daniels, barely 2 years into the force, admitted she'd been his inspiration. "She made me believe we could make a difference. Her death? It makes you question everything, but it also makes you want to fight harder." In the months following her death, Jennifer's story became more than just a headline. It was the subject of documentaries, community forums, and even changes in police protocol. Her bravery was immortalized in a mural painted near the precinct. Jennifer in uniform, her gaze steady, her hand outstretched as if reaching for the next person in need of help. But for those who knew her best, no tribute could replace her. Her best friend Michelle summarized it simply. She had so much left to give, so much she wanted to do, and now, we have to carry that forward for her. Jennifer's story, though tragic, became a rallying cry. For her colleagues, for her family, and for her community, it was a reminder of the fragility of life and the strength it takes to stand against darkness, even when the cost is immeasurable. Dominic Alvarez was a man who had everything: wealth, power, influence, but it wasn't enough. His choices, his ambitions, and his unrelenting desire for control led him to a path where love was twisted, trust was shattered, and a life was lost. As the courtroom fell silent on the day of Dominic's sentencing, it was clear that justice had been served. The judge's words rang out, final and absolute, sealing Dominic's fate. He stood there, once a towering figure of confidence, now reduced to a man bound by his actions, the weight of his choices etched into every line on his face. Life in prison. For Dominic, it was the end of the empire he had worked so ruthlessly to build. Jennifer Monroe's name echoed through those proceedings, a name that carried both tragedy and triumph. Her sacrifice had exposed a network of lies and corruption that reached far beyond the surface, unraveling a criminal underworld that had operated in the shadows for years. But for her family, and those who loved her, no legal victory could fill the void she left behind. Her grave became a gathering place not just for her family, but for countless others who had been touched by her bravery. A small bouquet of lilies placed by her mother every week, a badge laid down by a fellow officer as a symbol of respect, a handwritten note from a young girl whose life Jennifer had once saved, now faded but still legible. "Thank you for being my hero." The streets Jennifer had walked, patrolled, and protected seemed quieter now. The bustling city felt her absence in ways that words couldn't fully capture. The apartment where it all ended remained unoccupied, its luxury overshadowed by the memories it held. For Dominic, the prison walls were a constant reminder of his downfall. Gone were the lavish penthouses, the tailored suits, the commanding presence. Instead, he became another number in a system he once thought he was above. Behind bars, he had time to reflect, a lifetime to reckon with the choices that had brought him to this point. But remorse, if it ever came, was too late to make amends. Jennifer's colleagues carried on her legacy, inspired and burdened by the lessons her case had taught them. Training manuals now included her story, a cautionary tale of the fine line between duty and danger. Policies changed, aiming to provide better protection for undercover officers like Jennifer, so her sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. And the community she served? They remembered her as more than just an officer. She was a symbol of resilience, a person who stood for what was right, even when it came at a great personal cost. Murals of her image adorned walls, her eyes fierce yet compassionate, a permanent reminder of her strength and dedication. In the end, the story of Dominic Alvarez and Jennifer Monroe became more than just a headline. It became a reflection of the choices we make, the lives we touch, and the consequences we carry. It was a tale of love corrupted, of trust betrayed, and of justice sought and served. Jennifer's voice may have been silenced, but her story continues to speak, reminding us all of the courage it takes to stand against the darkness, and the price that courage can demand. If this story left you stunned, if you're still trying to wrap your mind around the choices that led to such a tragic end, then you're not alone. The truth behind Dominic's actions is layered, and the more you peel back, the darker it becomes. Was it simply a crime of passion, fueled by rage and betrayal? Or was there something deeper, something more calculating, lurking beneath the surface? We want to hear your thoughts. What do you believe drove Dominic to take such a devastating step? If you want to uncover more of these gripping true crime tales, stories of love, deception, and betrayal, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on the next chilling chapter we uncover. 5 stars from CJ Perezna. And don't forget to share your perspective in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Was Dominic simply a victim of his own violent impulses, or was there something more chilling at play? The truth, as always, may be more complex than we think.